Hello, friends, and welcome to another midweek meditation. This week, we're going to look at Revelation chapters 2 and 3. Before we do, I'm going to give a quick review. Last week, we heard Jesus tell the Apostle John to write to 7 churches. Those churches are also called the 7 golden lampstands. We learned that each church has an angel, a messenger, which we concluded is a human messenger, not an angelic messenger. In other words, each church has a pastor, a preacher. Those pastors are also symbolized by stars. So basically, what you have to remember is that we're dealing with churches and pastors in this section of Revelation. We have concluded that the 7 churches represent all the churches that exist between the first advent of Jesus and the second advent of Jesus. Now, chapters 2 and 3 record the 7 letters dictated by Jesus to the Apostle John, which is really exciting. We get to read letters dictated by Jesus himself. When you study the letters, you find that they contain 7 parts. I'm going to tell you what those parts are, and then I'll give you an example. The 7 parts are a salutation in which the church is addressed, a description of Christ, words of praise from Christ, words of reproof from Christ, a warning from Christ, a command to hear the Spirit, and a promise from Christ. Those parts are not always in the same order, and a few of the letters don't contain all of the parts for good reason. For instance, the letter to the church in Laodicea does not contain words of praise because sadly, there wasn't much good going on in that church. The lack of that part is strong communication. Likewise, a few of the letters do not contain words of reproof because those churches were doing very well. Again, the lack of that part is strong communication. I'm now going to read to you the letter that was sent to the church in Ephesus, and I'm going to highlight the 7 parts. First, we have the salutation to the angel of the church in Ephesus, write. That's followed with a description of Christ. The words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, who walks among the 7 golden lampstands. That's followed with words of praise. I know your works, your toil, and your patient endurance, and how you cannot bear with those who are evil, but have tested those who call themselves apostles and are not, and found them to be false. I know you are enduring patiently and bearing up for my name's sake, and you have not grown weary. Those words of praise are followed with words of reproof. But I have this against you, that you have abandoned the love you had at first. Following that is a warning. Remember, therefore, from where you have fallen. Repent and do the works you did at first. If not, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place unless you repent. That's a warning. The church will be destroyed. Following that, we have some more words of praise. Yet this you have, you hate the works of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. Following that is a command to hear. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. And finally, we have wonderful words of promise. To the one who conquers, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. We're going to see as we continue to study the book of Revelation just how great that promise is. Now, let's go back to this diagram. Here's what we need to understand. Everything said to the 7 churches, the words of praise, the words of reproof, reveal what is happening in churches all of the time between the 2 advents of Jesus. Today, there are wealthy churches and poor churches. Today, there are churches that are suffering terrible persecution and churches that are not. Today, there are churches fighting heresy, and there are churches which are not fighting heresy. So here is part of the application. These letters declare what churches need to think about as they minister between the two advents of Jesus. We need to use these letters for examination. This week, I encourage you to read all 7 letters and consider how well your church is doing and whether or not you are helping or hurting your church. Meditate on that this week. Now, one more important closing thought. As you are reading each letter this week, notice that it ends by referencing the return of Christ and the new heavens and new earth he will usher in. The first letter mentions the tree of life. The second letter, the second death. The third letter, hidden manna. The fourth, the morning star. The fifth, the book of life. And the sixth letter mentions the new Jerusalem. And the seventh letter ends with these amazing words. The one who conquers, I will grant him to sit with me on my throne, as I also conquered and sat down with my Father on his throne. We can word what we're learning this way. At the end of chapter 3, we are looking at the return of Christ and the life we will enjoy with him in the new heavens and the new earth. That's really important. We're going to continue to see the return of Christ as we keep moving through the book of Revelation. Meditate on that as well this week. And please join me again next week. Thank you.